Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Scott's Wrestling World Show. I am back. This week's is my second edition, and as of right now, this show is a little bit being uploaded a little bit late here. I'm sorry about this. These delays should not keep on continuing happening. On this show today, last week I gave the year in professional wrestling review. Today, I'm going to give a little short, brief one about the year in mixed martial arts. And boy, what a year mixed martial arts has had overall. Who would have thought in a million years? You know, when this year started back in January, who would have thought? You know, when there are still two big promotions in Pride and UFC, who would have thought in a million years that the Fertitta brothers and Zuffa, the owners of the UFC, would buy Pride? And because they bought Pride, they acquired a bunch of talent, such as Rampage and Mirko Cro Cop, among other fighters. One guy did not get those, Fedor Emelianenko, which is a different story for another time. Now, with the UFC and acquisition of Pride, we saw some great matches this year and great build-ups. For one thing, Quentin Jackson is the fighter of the year, in my opinion. The guy came out this year in his debut fight against Marvin Eastman, a guy who beat him early on in his career, in his first mixed martial arts, I believe it was, and Marvin Eastman beat him. Rampage got his revenge, got his rematch against Marvin Eastman in his debut back in February at UFC, and he beat up Marvin Eastman. He knocked him out. Second fight in the UFC, he goes for the light heavyweight championship against the Iceman Chuck Liddell. Chuck Liddell, a guy he beat up in Pride. Chuck Liddell was kind of... When we talk about Marvin Eastman and Rampage, flip it around. Rampage was Marvin Eastman, and Liddell was Rampage, because Liddell wanted revenge against Rampage, who had beaten him up earlier in his career. But Rampage beat Chuck Liddell, and if you beat Chuck Liddell, that pretty much makes you set. Because Chuck Liddell was probably the best fighter in the UFC at the time, and Rampage took that throne from him by beating him in less than 2 minutes earlier this year. And then in September, when Dan Henderson came home from Pride, you know, because of the acquisition of Pride, Dan Henderson came over with the light heavyweight championship of Pride and unified it with the UFC heavyweight title against Rampage in September, and Rampage beat up Dan Henderson. He didn't necessarily knock him out, and he didn't submit him or anything, went to the decision, but Rampage still beat him, became the undisputed light heavyweight champion, and that's why I give Rampage a nod, the thumbs up for fighter of the year, because nobody can have a year quite like he did. And then a bunch of other things happened this year, such as we saw Wanderlei Silva make his debut in the UFC, and whoever thought that would happen again. Mirko Cro Cop came in the heavyweight division. He started off a little bit strong. He beat up Eddie Sanchez in February, the same night Rampage debuted. But in his next fight, Cro Cop was knocked out by the undefeated Gabriel Gonzaga with a high kick. And who would have thought in a million years that would have happened? You know, so with Gonzaga beating Cro Cop, and then Cro Cop coming back and losing to Czech Congo, you can almost give the thumbs up to Cro Cop for being disappointing fighter of the year. He came in with a bunch of fanfare. He came in, everybody was expecting him to control the heavyweight division. Him and Couture was kind of a dream match. We all thought we were going to see it. Gabriel Gonzaga stood in his way, took him out. Czech Congo took him out, and now Cro Cop's ever so far away from becoming a UFC heavyweight champion in the near future. And who knows, maybe we have seen the last of Mirko Cro Cop. He still got to get his fighting spirit back, and I don't know what's happening with him right now. So that was a different story for a different time. Surprising thing of the year was Matt Serra and Gonzaga. Whoever thought Gonzaga would high kick Cro Cop and knock him out, and who thought Matt Serra would completely dominate George St. Pierre last April and take the welterweight championship? Because, no, Matt Serra, I don't know what you can call Matt Serra. You can almost call him like a lower level type fighter. You know, a guy who could, he could have matches here and there in the UFC, get a couple of victories here and there, but you never thought he would get the big win that basically catapulted his career. And he went away from the UFC from his first stint. He came back, won the Ultimate Fighter, the comeback season, to get the right to fight for the welterweight championship. And to tell you the truth, after we saw Travis Lutter get beat up by Anderson Silva, who gave Matt Serra even a chance to beat George St. Pierre. And it wasn't even by decision either. He came out and he demolished George St. Pierre. But that happens again. I don't think that'll ever happen again. You know, it was one of those fluke things that, you know, it's kind of like lightning strikes for somebody. George St. Pierre had an off night, and Matt Serra seemed to be on. And he benefited from it, becoming the welterweight champion. So he's a surprising fighter from the year. So is Gonzaga. Another surprising fighter from the year is Anderson Silva. We saw him take the middleweight championship from Rich Franklin, who was a dominating middleweight champion, in October of 2006. We saw him defend the belt against Travis Lutter. Then we saw him defend the belt against Nate Marquardt. Then we saw him give the rematch to Rich Franklin and demolish Rich Franklin for a second time. Rich Franklin was the top dog in the UFC middleweight division for some time, and Anderson Silva knocked him out twice. Anderson Silva was not a top dog in the middleweight division for now, as he is set to fight Dan Henderson. And to tell you the truth, I think Dan Henderson's our last hope. He is the last hope for anybody to take the belt off Anderson Silva, unless Anderson Silva gets severely injured and he cannot hold the belt and has to vacate it. I don't think that will happen. Anything can happen, though. Anderson Silva, whoever thought that, you know, he will keep the belt. The training of the guard at the UFC, for sure, over these past couple of months. Because at the beginning of January 2007, lightweight champion, Chuck Liddell. Welterweight champion, George St. Pierre. Middleweight champion, Anderson Silva. Heavyweight champion, Tim Sylvia. Tim Sylvia beaten up by Randy Couture. Now, it's Tim Sylvia, so I guess you could have seen it coming that Randy Couture would have demolished him the way he did. But then Randy Couture not only demolished Tim Sylvia, but he demolished Gonzaga this year. Chuck Liddell lost his belt, training of the guard again. And when you thought that the UFC had all their champions set for quite some time, you know, with the welterweight title and the middleweight title, boy, were we wrong. We were wrong this year. Couple title changes. It keeps things interesting in the UFC. It almost became the UFC was almost predictable beginning of the year. You could predict everything that was going to happen, who's going to win what because of the styles. But boy, were we proven wrong this year. Because, I mean, like I said, nobody thought George St. Pierre would lose to Matt Serra because George St. Pierre is an incredible fighter. But again, there goes the saying that anything can happen at any time, at any moment. Changing of the guard could happen in the UFC, and that's why I think UFC has gotten so good this past year. Now we're talking about Wanderlei Silva. He made his debut